Welcome to Black Girls Can Talk, the podcast where we dive into real, unfiltered conversations about what it means to be a Black woman in today's world. I'm your host, Dr. DaJaneil McCree, founder of Black Girls Can Talk. And here, we're creating a space where we can unpack everything from culture and beauty trends to mental health and the joys and challenges of Black womanhood. Whether you're here for the tea or looking for deep discussions, you're in the right place. So grab your seat at the table and let's get into it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Black Girls Can Talk podcast. My name is Brianna Ross, and I am here with Dr. DaJaneil S. McCree, the founder of the Black Girls Can Talk podcast. And it's fitting that we're kicking this off, starting with you, getting the story behind the podcast, all of the things that you've accomplished, because this is a space where we're elevating and we're celebrating Black women who are really just killing the game in different spaces, right? What better way than to start with you? So let's just dive right in.
Okay.
Let's go. What made you want to start this podcast? Actually, let's just start with the title, Black Girls Can Talk. I love that title.
Thank you.
What is the idea behind the title?
No, that wasn't me at all. That was absolutely God. And I even asked him, like, he's sure of himself and he never tells a lie. But I was just like, are you sure? Like, I was unsure. I was like, are you sure? That's a little bit controversial. And he was just like, that's the point. So I was actually... So going back, the podcast is an extension of my book, Black Girls Can Talk, and I was actually writing another book at the time. Well, I had been writing another book for years, so like 4 years prior, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick it back up. I'm gonna start again tomorrow. And like literally on my way to sleep, he was like, no, you're not. Like, put this one first. And so gave me the title, and every day I pray every morning, and just spend time with him. And I said, whatever you want to be written on these pages, just pour it out. So every day I was just typing. A lot of people ask me, like, what is in the details of the book? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I know, I can think about what I wrote a little bit, but like, it was really just God writing the entire time, I feel like. So he also came up with doing the podcast, because I never imagined to be in this space. But what better way to share the stories of Black women than doing it on a podcast platform? So it just made sense.
And since the podcast is built off of the book, let's go back to the book for a second.
Yeah.
What is the idea behind the book? What do you want readers to take away from the book?
Yeah, for sure. So it's really just a exploration of identity to begin with. Chapter 1 is actually identity. I didn't even try to title it anything else because I think it's important for us to understand who we are first, starting there, and then kind of getting to some of the other concepts like self-love, self-confidence, building resilience, things of that nature. And for me, it was just about pouring into the book stuff that they don't tell us, right? And so for me, I've always been the person that if I don't know something or didn't know something at a certain stage in my life, and I would have wanted to know, I tell other people what I would have wanted to know.
No gatekeeping here.
No, that's so weird to me. I do not like gatekeeping. I think it's weird. So I just don't gatekeep in it, and that is my book is an example of that. Just helping other Black women, again, just pouring into them and giving them the knowledge that I gained through life, because I didn't teach myself all of these things, right? So I'm just passing the information along to the next generation.
Yeah, and I think it's applicable no matter what field you're in, right?
Yeah.
But you're actually in the healthcare industry, and you study specifically Black women as it relates to Black women, but health disparities and how it impacts Black women specifically. How did you get into that?
Ooh, child, okay. I won't date myself. But I think it was just different spaces I was in professionally. My very first big girl job, I implemented satellite health centers for the city of Detroit. And in that space is kind of where I was in my master's program at the time. And then I started my PhD program shortly after. But our focus was really making spaces comprehensive as far as care. So we were reaching out to organizations who weren't providing care specific to the LGBTQ plus community. So that included PrEP medication. And then HIV testing, some of the services that people weren't really paying attention to. And so in that community, the disparities for Black women are just upsetting across the board. So even in my work with intimate partner violence, for women in general, experience intimate partner violence in their life, but Black women are more prone to experiencing it. Black women have higher rates of HIV. So I think knowing those things and being in those spaces and learning those things and knowing the demographics that it impacted, that's kind of where the honing in on Black women came from, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, and it does. And you kind of mentioned some of that research, and I know you do your own research as well. You're a researcher too. What is some of the research you've done over the years, a decade, right, of researching and being in the healthcare? Sorry to date you.
You're good. You're good.
You're still young, though.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
But, in doing some of that research, what's some of the research that has really stood out to you?
I love all of my work as it relates to intimate partner violence. I always term it as the intersections of HIV and IPV, or intimate partner violence. So it's something that's comforting to me to be of support to women because I do qualitative research, which is essentially storytelling, listening to, doing interviews, listening to other people's stories, which is it's in my professional life as well as business life. So just being able to not just hear their experiences, but talk them through it and affirm them and just be like, it wasn't you. It wasn't your fault. Like, kind of almost as a therapist, right? Like we kind of take that on as a researcher in the world that I work in, because quantitative research, you're just looking at numbers, right? So that's why I like qualitative research, because you get to talk to people. And so I think for me, the best part of what I do is being the person that's there and being supportive and empathizing with the women that I'm serving.
Yeah. And in that research, honestly, it's really stunning to me, like the rates of, like you were saying, intimate partner violence, but also HIV, and how Black women are disproportionately impacted by all of these things. In your research, have you gotten a sense of why that is?
Oh, there are a lot of reasons why. So my background in education is in health education. And so it starts with education or lack thereof. So just unfortunately, speaking specifically to IPV, we don't even recognize it as IPV most of the time. So we've gone through these experiences that are, as a researcher, I know are really IPV experiences, but we don't feel like, oh, he was just mad, or, emotional, that wasn't emotional abuse. He just yells all the time. Like, that's intimate partner violence. People don't really understand what all that encapsulates. So I think for me, it's unfortunately not shocking what I find in my research. So I think that from the beginning of time, we haven't been educated properly. And I think that just continues. It's been continuing, unfortunately. So it stems from lack of education. But also our genetic makeup is different. And so even cardiovascular disease, like there are so many things that disproportionately affect us. I just think it's our lifestyles. Not eating healthy, not engaging in physical activity, right? I think we don't know what we don't know. So because we haven't been educated, I think we just kind of go off of what was in our environment or what we see other people doing, and it leads to adverse health outcomes.
Yeah. And to that point of education, you are actually helping to educate the next generation, right? So you're also a professor.
Yes.
What do you teach and what do you try to instill in your students?
Yes, first of all, I love my students. Shout out to my students. So I teach public health. I just term it as that because it goes deeper, but public health. And so my graduate class is actually community engagement strategies in public health. And then I have an undergraduate class, discovering public health. So for me, literally last week, we were talking about some of the characteristics that you have to have as an individual doing this work, and that comes with humility. You have to make sure that you're respecting yourself, others around you, especially when we're talking about going into communities. We have to just make sure that, we're giving other people autonomy. Like, we have to first have certain characteristics to be able to help the populations that we're trying to help. But for me, it's important for them to know that, like, in the type of work that my students are, because a lot of them are doctorate of public health students, it's important to not just do it to do it, and to actually find your niche and find out what you're passionate about doing, because people can tell when you're not being genuine, right? So I actually have students that are like already working in the fields that they like in their career, but of course getting the degree will help them. So it's amazing to hear them talk about the work that they do, and I'm like, y'all are doing this already? Like, kudos to y'all. Like, they're really doing some great things in the city of Baltimore. And so I'm like, I want to figure out how we can collaborate. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have the degree yet, but you will. And so, like, let's figure out, because community engagement is like that's where I started, like I mentioned, with implementing those satellite health centers. So it's just something that I'm passionate about and love doing. And so I don't know. I need to get versed more in the Baltimore community for sure.
Hell yeah. Baltimore is such, I always tell people it's such like a gem. And
a hidden gem, right? Because people, you hear Baltimore, you don't think about
and it's hidden in the sense that it just is like misunderstood on the national stage, right? Those that like live in Baltimore know it's a gem. People go hard for Baltimore. But anyway, though, you know, the work that you do, I can tell you're really passionate about it. Mm-hmm. And did you always know that you were going to go this route, or was it something that you saw growing up, or, you know, your personal experience that really connected you to this work?
No, that's a great question. I absolutely had no idea I was going to get a PhD. It was not on my bingo card. I knew I always wanted to get a master's because I was like, I want to be like my daddy. Like, my daddy has, in the McCrees, we are serious about education because he just instilled that in us. And so I always knew that I wanted to reach that level, but I was okay at the master's level. I was like, we're good. And then my aunt, actually, she was in her program at the time, and she's also my sorority sister, but another one of my sorority sisters.
What sorority?
Hey. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Okay, period. Okay, so another one of my sorority sisters, they were just like, you should get a PhD. And I'm like, why? First of all, y'all are both in programs. Like, I'm pretty sure there are horror stories. But honestly, I did it so people couldn't play with me, even though they still tried to. I knew that in the field, in health education, just to be frank, I wasn't going to make a lot of money doing what I'm passionate about doing without it. And for me, the research part of it is what mattered, or not mattered the most, but was the biggest drive to get a PhD, because I always look at my research as my give back to others. And so that's why I got a PhD. I feel like you can do what I do. Well, you can't be a professor, but like, you can do a lot of what I do without having a doctorate. But for me, I knew that I wanted to give back to people in that way and really make a difference and kind of decreasing some of these health disparities, or trying to at least. So that's what led me on the journey to get a PhD.
Yeah. For Black women who are thinking about going the PhD route, what would you say to them, and what advice would you give? And
I'm only doing all of that with my face because it goes back to what I tell my students. If you don't have a reason why, don't do it. It's going to be a waste of time. You're going to be in debt for no reason. A lot of people get it to be called doctor, and I think that's wild. Like, you and I have known each other for how long, and you didn't know until I like sent you my book online or something. Mm-hmm. You were like, oh, you're a doctor, DaJaneil? I was like, apparently.
Like, oh, period.
Yeah, like because like for me, it's not something that I wear, as far as like, you don't need it. Like, it just is not in this conversation. Like, it doesn't, not that it doesn't matter, because it took a lot to get there, and it's something I'm proud of, but I don't need to walk around with that accolade, like wearing that accolade, right? Because that's not why I did it. And honestly, I did it, and let me go back, I really did it because of God's plan for me. I knew he had more, and everything that I'm doing now, like, I had to get a PhD to do. Like, even walking on this journey with this podcast, writing my book, like all of that stuff, it didn't come, these ideas and all of this experience didn't come until I had a PhD. So it was just one of his things that was in the little timeline of my life.
What challenges have you faced as a Black woman? I know Black women we are a minority in a lot of different spaces, and industries, and I'm sure, you know, the field you're in is no different, and research and all of that, academia. What challenges have you faced as a Black woman in those spaces?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I always tell the story, like, I think I was so used to PWIs, predominantly white institutions, that I didn't notice that there was a difference. Like, I didn't really realize that microaggressions were occurring. Like, I was just so used to them. It became normalized. So I didn't look at it until getting my degree as microaggressions. And then it was like a light bulb, like, wait a minute. I don't think they weren't supposed to say that, or like, you know, something felt off there. So I feel like my biggest challenge was making a space for myself, and also understanding that I matter in this space, and that I have a wealth of knowledge just like everyone else here. Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, we all have the same degree, like, we're gonna be good. And I thought it would just be, I was so naive, I thought it would be different after having my degree, but it actually got worse. as far as the workplace. And I want to clarify that by saying not the workplace itself, but like some of these concepts that like stifle Black women, right? So again, going back to microaggressions, like it unfortunately came from people who look like me. In my experience, Black women on this side, in this space, don't really want to see other Black women win. And I think that's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's sad.
That's crazy. So shout out to my HBCU because it's totally different. And I'm in a space where I can just be myself. And I don't have to code switch. I don't have to think about what I'm wearing, how I'm wearing my hair, like what my nails look like. I don't have to be so on edge or, have that wall up or feel like I don't fit in. I the same way I'm talking now is how I talk in my profession to my students, like, and it humanizes me because I have a PhD, but I don't have to sound smart all the time. And that's what I felt like I had to do in other spaces. I felt like I had to sound smart, look, do this, do that, not do this. And now I can just be. And I tell my students all the time, like, I stand corrected. Like, I'm sorry, y'all. I don't gatekeep. So, if I'm wrong, I'm going to tell you I'm wrong. Because maybe I forgot to tell you something, or maybe I did something wrong, and that's okay. Just because I'm the professor, I get it wrong sometimes too. And I think that's appreciated more. And even in the beginning of this term, I was like, look, y'all, bear with me. I just got here. They were like, no, it's fine. And I felt some type of way because I'm the person that, like, I want to have it all together. But they were just like, no, we get it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like,
it takes humility to say that and admit that. And I think people respect that, you know, in all spaces. For people that are looking to support Black women in some of these spaces where we might be the minority or we might face challenges, what would you say to them, and what are some steps they can take to foster inclusive environments? Yeah.
Listen. Literally, that's my biggest piece of advice. A lot of stuff it doesn't get left unsaid, it goes left unheard. So because people simply aren't listening. Wow. So we are vocal about how we feel and what's going on with us and, some of the things that we're experiencing, but people just don't, I won't say they don't care, but they're not listening. Right. So that in itself could change a lot. If you listen to someone, I understand empathy levels exist differently for everyone. So I know you may not empathize in the same way, especially because you may not have the same experience as me. But if you listen to me, you will understand what it is that I'm going through and experiencing. And hopefully you hear me also tell you how to help me in that, in whatever is currently going on.
Yeah, that's so good. Listening is a virtue.
Listening, yes. Sure enough.
How can people connect with you? How can people read your book and follow what you're doing in life?
Yeah, so Black Girls with an S _ can talk on all platforms. The podcast will be on YouTube, Spotify, all of the things. blackgirlscantalk.com as well. And then for those who are wanting to, maybe you're like me and you kind of want to see what you're getting into before you purchase something, each chapter is listed on the website, and it's a little snippet about what the chapter is about. So go to the website, take a look, read around the website, and just, see if it's something for you. But I guarantee you something in there will stand out to you and speak to you. So read the book, get the book, and listen to the podcast. Thank you.
Of course, exactly. Well, thank you all for tuning in to the Black Girls Can Talk podcast. I hope this won't be the last time you tune in.
No, please stay with us.
Please come back and join us. Have a good one. Take care.
Bye. That's a wrap on today's episode of Black Girls Can Talk. I hope you felt heard, empowered, and inspired by today's conversation. If you love what you heard, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your girls. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at blackgirls_can talk to stay updated on future episodes and join the conversation online. Got something you want us to talk about or want to be a guest on our show? Hit us up on social media or visit our website at blackgirlscantalk.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, Black girls can talk, and we've got a lot to say. Until next time, stay powerful.